buttoned that up.
I'm very relaxed, as you can tell. I've been stretching.
Sweet. So, hey, man, welcome to the ISS podcast.
Yeah,
Cale.
thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, no worries. 7:30 in the morning. See how we go. Just a little bit about you. I did a bit of research sort of last night when we were trying to cram it in, and there's a lot. And I just want to take people on your journey as, well, you're a sergeant at 2 Commando.
That's right.
Prior to that, you were the founding member of from 4RAR to 2 Commando.
Yep, I was one of them.
Yep.
There's a few hundred of us. Yeah, but yeah, that's right. I was there when it switched over in 2009. I was actually in Iraq at the time. So I actually put a message out because we had people all over the world, and it would have just been great to have a photo from all around the world and on team and so forth on the birthday. And yeah, it was a good idea, but it didn't happen. But yeah, it was born out of on the battlefield, really.
And then we go from, and then it's at 8 different black belts.
Yeah, I think, yeah,
Is it 8?
8 the last time I counted. So the only reason I say that is it sounds like you know what black belt you're getting, but I'm starting to get like recognised by other organisations. So technically I don't count that as a different black belt, but it's another organisation that's internationally recognising your qualifications and so on. So that's sort of picking up. So yeah, I think it's 8. It sounds about right, yeah.
So what are the disciplines that you've got?
Well, that's a good way to count them, so thanks for that. So I started out with Taekwondo as a youngster, and that was, I'd started training with a friend who did Taekwondo in 1979. And then early 80s I started. There wasn't much to choose from, so back then it's not like today. You know, you had a club in your town if you're lucky, and they were all clubs, so they trained twice a week. You didn't have the choices you had today. They had white uniforms, and they were kicking and punching, so I thought, yep, that's what I want to do. And then mid-80s, I started doing judo, and then I came across Aikido. So basically, I would read a martial art book and try and find this martial art and learn about it. Or I'd get posted, like I joined the army in 1987, and then you get posted. So I was looked for another Aikido club and came across Yoshinkan, which is a different style again. And there was a Japanese instructor in Townsville, and so I started doing that. And then I found a judo club up there, and it's just mixed and mashed. And then karate in 1987, and yeah, just went from there. And then I went to Japan to live in Japan and train in 1991. Was my first trip to Japan. And when I came back, you know, I knew more about martial arts, and that's just sort of how it went along. And eventually you do something long enough, you know, you'll get your black belt. But the main thing for me was to sort of have a foundation understanding, which for me was black belt. I thought was a good level for that. Then obviously in the 90s, UFC started with these Gracies, and they were, you know, beating on everyone. So we thought, okay, we need to learn that. And so we started that, and it's just sort of how it played out. And I mean, back then no one did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And everyone around what was called Vale Tudo, or no holds barred, MMA wasn't a word back then. Everyone just thought you were a thug, and the news media was, you know, constantly putting it down and saying how it's just pit fighting and so on. Completely opposite today, where you know, it's as sort of common to hear about it as football or anything else.
Yeah, to respect.
I think we were watching the UFC 1. I think we got some DVDs from some
old ones.
Yeah, the old ones. UFC 1 with like a sumo wrestler and fucking Gracie.
It was out of control. Yeah, and it was like the idea was style against style. So obviously, Jorge and Gracie was who was started it and promoting it was about promoting Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. So, you know, he wanted to have this style against this style and show that the family style is what was the thing to do. For us, I mean, we had this sort of judo, you know, like I saw it, and I went to Jean-Jacques Machado. His first seminar, I think, was about 94 or something like that in Australia. It was brought out by John Will, and I just popped in to that and got beaten up and played with, and just thought, yeah, what's going on, you know? And yeah, it was, and that was it. As ironically, I got my black belt with Jean-Jacques Machado in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so sort of ended up in the army and away and back, and with these with someone who was linked to his brother Higan, and then you know, other people based on moving a lot, which also slowed down my progress in the belt system because I went to war, things like that. People tend to want to see you when you're grading, so it made it a bit harder to grade. But I always kept training, and yeah, ironically got my black belt with Jean-Jacques. So to answer your question, in a long way, Taekwondo started, Judo, I've had black belt, 3 styles of Aikido, or old, it's Aikibudo, and some of them actually are still called Aiki Jiu-Jitsu when the founder trained, which is Tamiki, which is the sport version, Yoshinkan, which is considered the hard style, which is sort of like it's what is taught to the Tokyo Riot Police, and Gokushinru, which is a Yoseikan school, which is they're all pre-World War II style, so they're not so much the flipping around flowing as much. You see that in Yoshinkan, but the others are more look more like jiu-jitsu style, you know, or competitive version. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Kyokushin Budokai-kan, which is all-round fighting. Kudo Daidajuku, I ran that as a branch chief for Australia. What else? Yep, that sounds about right.
So does karate, is karate, has it got utility in the modern disciplines?
The original karate started from Okinawa, is really a mixed martial art, all-round fighting. The reason you don't see that is the introduction to it to mainland Japan. So if you want to have a quick sort of little history lesson on it.
Fine.
Okay, so basically there was a massive international boxing match that was famous around the world, that was watched back in the 1920s, and the Japanese were just sick for boxing after seeing it, you know, just like we do today when we see something. They didn't have any boxing coaches and things like that, and they're like, well, what do we have that's, you know, like boxing? And Japanese martial arts in mainland is all about, it's all around the weapon systems and stuff, like, you know, the battlefield stuff that of styles like Yagu Shinkage-ryu or Katori Shinto-ryu and stuff like that, and then the unarmed systems that's sort of with a weapon and so on that supports a weapon. So they're like, oh, hang on, you know, they've gone over, and the Okinawans, which is now part of Japan, used to be separate, they've got this thing where they're kicking and punching, and it's better than boxing because they're kicking as well. So, you know, that was the thing, and the reason they got rid of the throwing and the other elements is because it was the boxing element they wanted to promote.
So they bastardised karate to sort of compete with the Western boxing.
Yeah, to Western boxing. Fuck. Yeah. And it had no high kicks. So even the high kicks was influenced by the French with Savate. So the French were one of the trainers for the new Japanese army. So when Japan went through its period of modernisation, the French were part of that, and the French were doing Savate. And the French had a system for their unarmed combat where they did like little katas and all these high kicks and that. And the karate guys liked the high kicks too, so they took that from Savate. People don't realise the Western influence on Japanese, Japanese karate, definitely. But before that, it was just grab people, pound people, low kicks, elbows. It's literally, if you look at Okinawan styles, it's all about fighting. The thing is, it has katas, and the katas can sometimes lose context. Well, sometimes, often.
So what's a
context.
kata?
Kata is when you see people doing these moves in the, like a dance, if you like, a sequence of moves on their own. There's also katas that you do with a partner. So judo, for instance, has partner katas. And the old martial arts have katas too. But they're not as rigid as what people think they are. They actually, the different ways of doing katas is basically because people just did things slightly different. So it's the same technique, but my body's different and so on. So whoever sort of led that style of karate may do the same kata in slightly different version. Their followers copy that, but basically that's the way that particular person did that kata. So it's, and the reason for katas is form, because the human body's mostly made up of water. You know, we don't understand structure, and if you play cricket or whatever, you need structure to learn how to bat or learn how to bowl, teach the body how to move. So it's a way of teaching movements before the actual putting hands on people, so that, you know, your stances start become natural and things like that. Yeah, so it's an interesting thing, and it's funny because you move away from it and you just go down this line of, oh, it's all garbage and it's all about fighting. And then as time goes on, you just start learning things and discovering things, and it sort of comes back and you realise that you just didn't know much when you're younger.
So what's the drive to, when you, like young Paul going, I want to learn all these different, is it just a thirst for knowledge, or was there?
No, it was a thirst for stop being beaten up. Yeah.
Yep.
So that was it. I just got beaten up a lot, and back then Bruce Lee was a big thing. And yeah, so you just watch this little Asian fella just jump up and
Kick the fuck out of people.
kick the fuck out of everyone, and just go, yeah, that's the way to go. So I just learnt martial arts, and I didn't, and you know, you don't have the confidence to fight back when you're not used to. So it took a lot of years to actually do something about people beating down on me, and one day I just unleashed, and there it was. I actually did something that it was just something that I've always done, you know, just fell back into old habits, and then realised it didn't work, and the guy was coming at me, and then I actually did what I've been trained to do, and that worked just fine. and then after that was like, yeah, no worries. It gave me confidence, you know.
Yeah, I think there's a massive thing with, because there's stuff with chicks growing up. Chicks like, oh, you don't know what it's like to be a chick. You know, you have we have periods and we have fucking social reputation destruction. Dudes get in, like when you're young, you got to learn to fucking bang, because it's different. It's a physicality and testosterone, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to learn to move forward in the face of fear.
Well, that's right, and you know, all this this anti-bullying, which I'm all for. You know, it's not a good thing to be bullied, okay? And language towards people and that, yep, it's good to have manners. I mean, a lot of these things are just taken care of if we just have social structure and manners. And we just sort of pissed all that off. And then we wonder why we've all got to, you know, start thinking this way and that way about bullying and so forth. Well, how about we just be fucking polite to start with? And for me, that works well, because I just think, well, if I'm polite and you're coming at me, well, at least I started off on the right foot. So that sort of must make me the good guy, you know. So there's a bit of that. But the other side of it too is, let's see, I was in primary school in the 70s. So it was the 80s, you know, when I hit secondary school. I did year 12. I did my year 12 in 1986. So that means it was 1980 when I started secondary school, right? So 70s, we went through all these new ideas, you know. I mean, when I went to school to start with, you got the cane, things like that. Like, you just corrected your behaviour pretty quickly. But we started these new ideas where you don't do this, and you have time out, and, you know, don't fight back. We negotiate. None of it works.
I don't think any of it still works. What are your kids?
Not a
It's
thing.
all positive reinforcement these days.
Yeah.
I've got young kids, like 2 and 4, in daycare or preschool, and they get in trouble, and I'm like, the teachers bring it up, and I pick them up. They're like, "Oh, you did this today, did that." I'm like, "Cool. How did you respond?" And they're like, "Oh, well, we use positive reinforcement." I'm like, "How'd that go?" And they're like, "Yeah, no, it doesn't work."
Yeah, that's why we're letting you know. Please do something about it.
It happened in Perth. Yeah.
You've
2 days ago down at the beach, there was a party, and there was 100 kids at this party, and only 10 people rocked up from another sort of part of town and flogged every single one of them, and it's all on video, and not one of that group of 100 stood up for themselves or fought back. They just sat there and watched their mates get flogged. So it's like that whole thing just then you were talking about, like, don't fight back, negotiate. It doesn't fucking work when you're getting bashed.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if it worked, we wouldn't have wars.
Yeah.
You know, like, simple as that. Once someone decides that violence is the answer, then you're going to have to sort of
You need to
dig
follow
in.
people, yeah.
Simple as that. So, yeah, look, people can do as they like, and I think a lot of it, I think a lot of it is because of how safe society is, generally speaking. So you can make up whatever you want when you're actually not dealing with violence. You go, "Oh, this is the best way to deal with violence." How often do you deal with violence? I've never dealt with it. Or someone raised their voice at me, it was horrible.
You're
It's
traumatized.
like, so that's violence. And I know people that use the language. You know, it's like when people use language and they say, "Yeah, they've been abused." You know, it's like, what's abused? Well, you yelled at me. Well, okay, if that's your interpretation of abuse, then I need some new words for being beaten to a pulp. Because, you know what I mean? Like,
the same
it's just
word.
like, yeah, can't use the same word, because if that word means that now, yeah, it's odd.
Or verbal assault. And
Verbal assault. Yeah, okay, no worries.
I mean, you're right. That's where we're at in history right now. Is the Western world is so safe and comfortable that we've allowed room for all these social experiments that are kind of taken over. It's getting dangerous.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is there's a lot of virtual signalling. So I think there's a lot of people in government positions and so forth that see these minority groups who are empowered mostly through political reasons. You know, most people couldn't care less about politics. So you have people with agendas who are easy for politicians to say, "Hey, I'll back your agenda, you back me." And then you have this minority group that has sort of a wider political agenda. And then all of a sudden I'm empowering this minority group and turning things into law. And the reason the majority hasn't said anything is they just don't care about the politics. Yeah. And then you get to the point where we start caring because we're getting sick of being told, you know, like, quite frankly, I'd just rather be left alone, like most people. You know, we need politicians. I don't like the word government. I prefer it to be a service that looks after the group. But, you know, democracy is a great, I guess, a better version because we separate powers. You know, communism sounds great. It's just much easier to take over a communist government if you're a tyrant. So it's harder to do it in a democracy. So it's as simple as that. I'm just not into people controlling other people.
I think the Swiss system works. Like, I know there's a good crossover from our company name, but the Swiss system is essentially like that. It's like you've got 7 parties, and they every year, I think around 7 anyway.
Sure it's not 8?
8, well, it'd be good if it was. Yeah, I've definitely done my research on that one. But every year they just hand over, like, you are the speaker now, but every decision has to go to a vote from essentially a referendum.
Yeah.
If they get, I think it's like 2,000 signatures to say we want to push this into Parliament, the whole country votes on it.
Yep.
And that seems, I mean, I'm sure they got their flaws too. That seems like a system that makes sense.
Yeah. I think they've also got a system where they put together a public, like a jury, but they're given a task, like we need this public works, right? You guys will investigate it, and you do your jury duty, but it's for this works, and there's no interest. It's just, what is it that we're checking out, and you know, you're getting all the facts and science, and then they, as a collective, make the decision rather than the interest parties who are going to make money out of it or however they're going to do it. And it's, I think that's a good system too. That's a great idea as far as I'm concerned. I'd rather not just do duty for crime, but for progressing the country. And then you feel like you've got a part in it too.
100%, that is good.
So so in 50 years' time, if we look at disassociation from violence, so violence is not cool right now. Okay, like if you think of the majority of Australia, like positive reinforcement, assault, all this sort of stuff, you're going to need to have violent. I don't think war's going away any time in the next 100 years.
No, I think war's coming pretty much sooner than that.
I think we need to dive into that one.
No, I won't go there. But I think, we're in a very, very dangerous time.
Yep.
And I'd probably equate it to around about 1938. I'd say that's where we're floating around at the moment.
Yeah. Yep.
A lot of people, it feels like that. A lot of people throw that idea around going, we're in a position now, or we've kind of been simmering there for the last kind of almost decade. When you see like the rise of Donald Trump's and Boris Johnson's, it's like there's that silent kind of majority that you're talking about that don't give a shit about politics. We're almost at the end of the tether where they're like, I think everyone's going to start voicing their opinion because we kind of had a gutful.
Yeah. And look, those sort of people, and I'm not here to rubbish any group in particular, but why do we end up with these sort of people in democratic, societies who are probably extreme the other way? And it's because that's, it's a two-party system. And here's the person who, we've got these people who are thick-skinned. They're used to, like, they're characters that are used to being controversial. They're used to people, getting stuck into them. They've got a lot of ego. And so they're the ones who stand up first and take the hits and, I think this. And it may not be the best person for the job, but they're the first person from the other side who's taken all these hits and willing to take the hits. Where a lot of smart leaders and stuff just rather stay in business or keep away from politics, keep away from that sort of thing. But I think we're at a point now we need to actually have smart, educated leaders starting to enter government. And we probably need to get off all the crap about backgrounds and stuff like that. Because quite frankly, if you've got a leader that's done nothing, which is sort of the thing we have now, so it's all about, they're entering political parties from university and being very careful not to have any experience in life that could taint their ability to be...
Or help them lead a country in conflict.
But the thing, or help lead a country, because you literally have not made mistakes to learn from them. I'd rather someone who's stuffed up for a long time and has turned it around and is a phenomenal individual now, couldn't care less about the past then. It's like, obviously that's what made this person who they are today. But it's like, 20 years ago, he said this. Yeah, because 20 years ago...
It was okay to say
It was okay to say that. So, it's not now, so whatever. Do you say it now? No. Well, shut up. Let the guy do the job.
Yep.
Like, we just got to get to that point. And I think we will, because I think it's going to happen. And
It'll be leadership through community, won't it? Through committees, as opposed, because I'm not going to make a decision. Let's put it.
Yeah, everything's committee. Drop it on a committee.
Yeah.
And so nothing happens quickly. But things are happening at the moment. There's a lot going on. So, yeah.
So what happens if this doesn't kick off with where it looks like it's going, and say we have another, we continue the proxy wars for the next 50 years, and we know that violence in society, we're sort of, this big gap between soldiers and the society that they protect is probably broadening, and when guys come back from overseas, they're a pariah generally, and it's their job to fit back into society. And they're probably not going to be able to, because society continues on this path. You get these people, violent people, good men that do violent things. Are we going to create a caste system where they're going to be like, we just have to have a pool of hard-hitting dudes that don't belong, like ants or whatever?
Yeah, like break glass.
Yeah.
Time of war. Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I keep away from general society myself. I mean, you look at where we are in the centre and the things that we do, it's like there's nothing normal about it. and the sort of people that are attracted to it are like-minded people. So yeah, I've got no interest in. Again, I like the idea. I've got no issues with that, having little subcultures and little groups that hang out and do their thing. Like, there is no one answer. You know, I don't want a little red book and be sitting there waving it, going, yeah, this is the go. You know, and all 20 million of us are doing the same thing. I'm not interested. I'd rather have a whole bunch of different ideas and little groups that get together based on, you know, what your interests are and how you want to live your life. As long as you're not bothering anyone else, go for it. Be as crazy as you want to be.
So you took, before, so everyone, we get some context in this, you went overseas. You've done multiple deployments overseas with 2 Commando. You had these skill sets in your particular martial art disciplines before you went, and was that useful over, like, we want to get to the the crux of the whole thing as well. Were those disciplines, did you employ them overseas? And were you like, thank fuck I know how to do that? And did the current unit at the time have or teach those particular skill sets?
Okay. That is a no, yes, no, I think. Right? So, yeah, mostly not. Like, what you quickly realise is that the equipment you're in and the fatigue that you're under. So you're entering a battle, and you're far from at your best by the time you're in it, because you haven't slept well, or you had a firefight that night, or it's just, you're not sitting there for 3 months prepping for a UFC fight. So you're not at your best, and you're not having a fair fight with somebody else. So that changes the dynamic a lot. So you obviously want to deploy your weapon systems, and you want to work in teams so you have the best chance of victory. And the only time that you're really going to do anything else is if you're just simply controlling somebody that you want to, capture, or someone's got the drop on you, and you've got to get them off your weapon, or they're on one of your guys, or whatever. You're in hand-to-hand fighting, and then you've got to do something. And that's probably where I learned the most about reality. Everyone's like, oh, submission, the ultimate. No, it's not. I thought that too, and you just, okay, let's do it. And then you're breaking someone's shoulder or their arm, and they're still trying to kill you. And you realise, oh, okay, no, that doesn't, someone may sort of surrender, give up, like tap out. I mean, tap out is basically surrendering. You're saying, okay, you've captured me, I give up. But when someone doesn't, and you'll see that too, like if you watch some Gracie fights, say Hoyler Gracie fighting Sakuraba, he never tapped. Sakuraba busted his shoulder, didn't tap. So that thing's not tapping. Like it's, and then, it's about safety. We can't just have people's arms popping off in competition. It's not good for the crowd. So, the referee can step in. We change the rules to make it, and that gets a wider audience. And the more you want a wider audience, the more you're going to change things. So it's very interesting. But fighting in a cage that's not reality either. I mean, people go, reality fighting. What? Where else in the world do you see a octagon and you walk in there with no weapons, no anything, in your shorts, and someone else hops into the other end?
Literally never.
You're in a bar, you're in clubs, there's people everywhere, there's noise, you got hit first, that's the first thing, there's multiple people, there's nothing, that's not real, it's sport. So it doesn't matter how we want to sort of angle it, it's the environment is artificial. And that's probably the better way to look at it. So what I started to realise, it's not about my techniques, it's about my tactics. And it's about understanding environments. And if I can predict and see the indicators to violence, the predictors, and and have situational awareness and understand how to deploy tactics, that's the stuff that keeps you safe. And if you think about it, that's really what streetwise people who, let's say criminals if you like, or just people who are involved in a lot of violence, they start to become savvy with the environment and they start to deploy tactics. And it's not a stand-up fight, you know, so yeah, it's different.
So what do you do when, I mean, obviously overseas, you've had more experience than most people. You're one of the nicest blokes I've only spoke to you for the last hour. We spoke yesterday a little bit as well. One of the nicest, humblest blokes that I've met, and you've probably killed a fucking fair few people. But that first couple of experiences, when you break someone's arm, you're like, I know how to hurt this guy. I'm going to break his fucking arm, you know. And then he'll stop. What do you do then? Like,
yeah, it was just shock because you've done the bit that you've trained to do. So you got to the bit where you tap. And it's like, oh. So it's like now. And so now you're, you know, first of all, there's stress involved because you're fighting. You know, you're fighting for your life and for the life of your teammates. You're doing something automatic because your body, you've been taught and you just automatically do your thing. But you're also automatically looking for the response that brings. Now, as crazy it sounds looking for a tap on a battlefield, how you train is how you fight. So you'll do it. You'll just automatically do whatever it is that you do. And so it's not a bad thing because you're in a fairly strong position, so it's not bad. But it didn't end it. So then it's not ending. So now your heart rate's going up. And, you know, once that heart rate starts smashing through 145 beats a minute, it's already high because you're fighting, which is why soldiers have to be fit. It's so that you're starting with a lower heart rate. So when you're under stress and your heart rate goes up, you're in your sort of optimum sort of cruising altitude where you can do your piece. But once it punches past that limit, it's like, you know, it's like you're flying too high and you have no oxygen. You know, you're gonna pass it, you're gone. So, and you can't think. So when your heart rate's up like that, your cognitive processes start to, you know, fall away. So it was odd, but I felt, well, you've lost one wing, so I've still got an advantage. So I've broken your arm, I've still got an advantage. I'm on top of you. And then I thought, well, I've got to strangle the guy, because if I strangle him, you know, the blood, oxygen stops going to the brain, he'll fall unconscious. So that's sort of what I thought, and that's what I did. And that works just dandy.
So you take these things, I mean, what was it, when you finished that and you're like, well, that didn't fucking work, like, because you go, there's quicker ways of doing it. You, of all people, would know. There's quicker ways of killing someone than strangling them. So you're probably sitting there going, fuck, that didn't work. And then get back to Australia and start.
Immediately from that, I started taking notes. I did a lessons learnt in Canberra with, I think, the muck cell, the military armed combat thing was still going then. But I did a lessons learnt. And also just, I was fanatical about the capabilities. So at work, you know, anyone that was involved in a firefight, anyone that had close contact with the enemy, I'd interview them. You know, I'd say, righto, you know, next company would come back and, you know, one of the sergeants, you know, Brett Wood or someone would say, hey, you know, so-and-so, this happened and this happened. You know, you read and you go find out who was involved and say, oh, yeah, that was Jono. And you go, okay, sweet. And so you go up and say, hey, mate, what happened? What did you do? What was the result? Take notes. So literally the Australian Combatives Program is a result of experiences from 2 Commando and what worked very well and quickly, and also what worked with minimum training. You know, it was just a thing that, it was a smart thing to do at the time, so let's duplicate it. Now let's teach it. So it just becomes this is what you do in this, if this happens, and then just overlay it on multiple situations.
Because we didn't have, what did we have? What was the old MS, military self-defense?
Yeah, military self-defense.
Fucking horrible.
I did one day, mate. one day of training for military self-defence, and that was it. It didn't trickle down.
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing. Yeah, it's just too much martial art to it. And also its influences as well. And look, they meant well. The fellow who sort of ran that, Travis Foray, a major, absolutely well-intentioned, you know.
You've got to give them something.
Yeah, got to get something. But what happens is you sort of, the military guys go, well, I need experts. So they go off and get civilians who have no military context. And then there'll be something else that they like, and that has a huge amount of military context, and also they're in conflict. And there's a lot of elements within military self-defense that are in conflict. And then you're like, well, we want to practice unarmed combat. So then your civilian guy goes, oh, okay, we're all dressed with weapons. So how do I get you unarmed so we can start doing my martial art? So people start lowering their weapon to start doing hands-on. It's like, that's what, like, if you think about it, the reason soldiers blew their brains was because, or blew their minds, was because they're lowering their fucking weapon. And everything you're taught to do is to bring your weapon up. So when you know, I got the CQF sort of rejigged and everything else, everything was opposite. It was all about getting your weapon up, getting your weapon on the target, getting back on your gun. If you can't get on your gun, get on your secondary. If you can't get on that, get on your auxiliary. And it was just this circle of weaponizing yourself. And how do I assist you if you call in assist? How do you assist me? So we're not guessing anymore and just falling over each other. And once you've got that going, it's sort of like a game of rugby then, you know. This is how you sort of do a scrum, and this is how you get the ball out, and this is how you... And it just becomes a little game of sort of rugby. And then the close quarter stuff becomes just a tactics with the shooting. So we do all this tactical work with our firearms, yet close quarters fighting becomes some weird black art. And it's like, no, it's just, okay, old mate's been hit, no worries. Keep him out of the fight, so we clear the room, keep the guns up, and first support comes in, third guy cover off so that those two aren't going to get shot. Like, it's just automatic, like, you know, and that's sort of, that was the big difference, was to take the martial art play out of it and then bring the tactics, war fighting into it. But ironically, you want people to keep training. And the way you train is to enjoy yourself. So rolling around doing jiu-jitsu is a great way to develop fitness and skill sets that lend themselves to close combat. But it's got to be play so people aren't getting hurt, you're not rolling around in armour. And then you've got to have a system or structure that then drives that understanding of what you're doing so you can build instructors. So you start realizing, oh, well, now we're sort of getting back into martial arts sort of stuff. And just as long as you understand why you're doing it, you don't want all your soldiers playing martial arts. You want people who are interested in becoming subject matter experts and instructors doing it, so that it's living and growing and you're developing experts. But if you have no interest whatsoever, here's the minimum you're doing.
Because there was no... I joined the Army in 2002 at 1RA. Mm-hmm. There was nothing. It was bayonet training.
1RA, mate. All you needed to be was in 1RA, mate.
That's
all
it.
you needed.
There was bayonet training, and...
That was my first battalion, mate.
Yeah.
1RA, yep. Fine battalion.
Well, where do you go from there? Bayonet training, and it was like, I used to box when I was a kid.
Yeah, so in the Army we had boxing. So when I was in 1RA, we boxed. We literally had inter-company boxing competitions and inter-battalion and so on. There was a little martial arts school in the gym as well, and just different things. But you're right, there was the thing was not to do martial arts in your own time, you know, which I just thought was bizarre. And unarmed combat really was, it was just a small group that did it. And it was, you know, run by, you know, legends of unarmed combat. And they were far and few between. And, you know, you tried to get on a course and most likely you wouldn't. And then you had to be in a specialist area to do an unarmed combat course and so on. So it was interesting. And the thing, we made it very hard to be instructors. And that meant people lost their ability to teach because they didn't maintain their skill set. And that's probably the number one thing that concerned the G7 when they brought in the combatives, was the instructor situation, that we just wouldn't have enough instructors. So probably the only thing that we've done a little bit too quickly is how fast we can qualify instructors.
Yeah, because we were struggling when we left. They're like, the whole battalion needs to be ACP qualified. I'm like,
Yeah.
fuck,
Yeah.
well, you're going to drop this, just, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is why the combative centres, the idea of a combative centre at each brigade, so 3 brigades just opened theirs. They actually invited me up there with the brigade commander to open the new centre. And then the idea is to have the subject matter experts, what we call combative master trainers, just borrowed the term from the US Army, and have them as subject matter experts. And they're the ones, so you don't need them to instruct, but they're your go-to people for capability. So that's the idea of this thing, that, you know, we get it that it takes a long time to have someone squared away with skill sets, but there are people joining the Army now that have great skill sets. So let's teach them the tactics. If they're interested, you'll rapidly spin them up as CMTs, and then off you go. So that's the idea of it. So we're working on it. So even now the program is evolving, and the Kiwis are just taking it on. So the New Zealand Army.
Yeah, they dropped their program for that.
So they're taking on ACP. They're just grabbing the Australian program and implementing it in. But as time goes on too, they'll probably want to work things out that better suit, you know, their army and how they think. So yeah, so it's an ANZAC capability now. I even call it ANZAC P, the Australian New Zealand Army Combative Program. The new ANZACs, yeah. So yeah, it's exciting times as far as that goes. But yeah, it's got a life of its own now. It's huge, and you know, there's plenty of things that happen. Like even when the program started, you know, you might say this is the best stuff for level 1 and then level 2 because they want to break it up. But if you know, the boss, the commander, is going to make a decision, and he's going to want to put his take on it, and you just got to accept that. Yeah, no worries, fair enough. And now there's a lot of different players involved, and you need to empower them, because if you try, you're never going to control something forever. And if you don't think of it as stewardship and your job simply just to leave the place better for the next person to sort of have the best chance of success, and you try to get too emotional about it, it just ends up just falling apart. So, yeah.
So the proximity to, one of the interesting points is, going back a little bit, your proximity to killing. When you're talking about World War II, when you saw people, I think it was a guy on Killing and on Combat. Who wrote that?
That's Dave Grossman.
And he was saying, interesting to get your opinion on it. They were saying fighter pilots or people on battleships shooting other battleships disassociated from killing because they're like, oh, I'm just shooting at a ship, I'm not really killing people. And that the proximity to killing someone can have an increase in negative effects afterwards, or more of a personal experience, almost to the point of like, they're talking like sexual experiences. Not, I'm horribly paraphrasing this.
No, yeah, I know what you're saying, yeah.
What is it like shooting people? A lot of, you know, there's been some experience overseas, people shooting people. What is it like being right there and fucking killing someone with your own hands?
Well,
and how did that fucking affect you? Were you like what was the range of emotions?
The closer you get to, well, first of all, the more you see the human face, you know, the more it's personal, you know, like it's the closer you are to someone, the more stress, the more, you know, your realization, same as like a target exploitation, you know, so if you might be at a distance and you've fired on the enemy and they're fighting and you're doing your piece, but then you're entering the room and there's dead bodies, you know, it's like, depending on if the firefight's still going or if it's over and you're just now checking, like, they're people. And you had nothing, you know, you don't know who they are, you don't have anything personally against that. And, but they're fighting you. So you sort of accepted that, hey, it's you, me, I'm here, so I'm a professional, and I accept that if I get killed, I get killed. Like, that's how I sort of think with it. You know, it's only fair. Like, if I'm going to kill someone else, and I accept that you may kill me, right? So it's different to a situation where you're not looking for a problem or a fight, and someone's bringing it to you. That's, you know, that's a different mentality. You're bringing it, but you're bringing it too because something happened, and you want to be a part of the solution. So, you know, people fly planes into towers, and then they're telling you, well, this is where they're hanging out and doing their training. We need to shut that down. You know, and I get it. It makes sense. But yeah, it's the closer you get to that face, that human face, is what makes it real. So whether they're dead when you come to them, or whether you're fighting them and having that interplay, that's the weird thing. You know, like, the person's alive and you're fighting them, but you just need to win because you don't want to be the one that loses. At least if they lose, you're the ethical, and no matter what's been said lately in the media, predominantly Australian soldiers are very ethical and excellent, and you're the one who will, well, I'll capture you or whatever, you know. It'll be done to the rules of combat, whereas the Taliban, you know, you don't want to be captured by the Taliban.
Your fucking head cut off.
You get your head cut off. You get, you know, and if you look at what happened to the Russians, where, you know, we had, not Australia, but the US had observers who were there, you know, because obviously it was a proxy war against the Soviet Union. And then you look at the torture and what happened to Russian soldiers when they were captured, you know. So you don't want to be one of those guys. And your attitude is, you know, you'd rather die than be captured. So, yeah. But most of the time, you also feel very, very dominant. Like, you've got this team that's highly trained. You know what you're capable of. You just do it over and over, and you're just in there, and you're dominating. And, you know, probably the biggest kick too is when you lose one of your own guys. You know, that's a huge kick. Like, that knocks you over. And yeah, that's the hardest thing to deal with, is losing your own guys. And then when that starts to ramp up, the other thing too is losing guys when you're not there. That's it. That's bad again. So it's like you're not even there. You just hear that a mate got killed, and you're like, fuck. And you're not there. Or there's other good people there, but you still have this guilt sort of thing.
So if you were there, maybe things could have been different.
Well, yeah, or just, yeah, your mate died and you weren't, you know, nearby. Yeah, it's weird. But as far as the stress and the effect, the closer you are to someone, and there's evidence, tons of evidence that, yeah, that's going to have a big effect on you. So distance, that's why shooting people is, you know, and the further away you shoot them, the more effective people can be. And the closer you get, it just gets weird. So that's why you've got to have soldiers that are very... People think that you just automatically fight for your life. And you don't. And one of the skill sets, one of the things I did in the army was military climbing. And you just, sometimes you get hit a crux and you just think, fuck. You know, like, I just feel like I can't get over this. It'd just be easy to just let go and fall off the cliff. And then that was really interesting to me, that was something that went through your head. I thought, fuck, that's bizarre thing, you know, that, you know, you're under so much stress that you're just like, fuck. And then I thought, that's probably a very similar thing that happens in combat. Some people who you just see them to sit there. It's like, well, it's all your choice, you know, you're going to kill me, or maybe it's just easier to die.
Yeah.
Rather than fight back, you know. So you've got to instill this mindset, or else people just lamb to the slaughter if you don't have that warrior, go forward, attack. The other thing too is, I'll tell you right now, you save more lives with that offensive mindset. So I'll give you an example. Is we did a heap of training with 7RAR, like when we first started prepping soldiers and assisting with for Afghan trips. So they got sort of right into the close combat and the ACP as it sort of first was sort of shaping. And they did an exercise where they were basically given this old shopping centre or whatever it was. They could just do CQB, close quarter battle through it and so on. And they had reservists in there. And they told the reservists, they were unarmed, they told them when they come through the door, they won't shoot because you're unarmed, but what I want you to do is get up and just push them out the door. Right? And it's like, oh, okay, so they're ready to go. So these guys, and I've seen the video of it, and the door's cracked open, and the first guy gets up to push him out, and he just gets throat punched into the wall because the guy's just automatically done his ACP, so he's just gone crack. He's just rammed into the wall. The other guys are passing into the room, and the other two guys that are meant to help just went, no, fuck that, and just sat down, like literally, no, I'm not doing that. Sat down, and my old mate got wailed, and they're in the room. So because of that aggressive nature, they're dominating that space. And now put that into a context of battle. 3 people now survived that. They would have been taken prisoner. Like even if that was a firefight, they're unarmed, they would have been taken prisoner. Now you take that ability to have that aggressive, offensive mindset, and let's say that it's got pushed out and they've always been, don't get too, make sure you're nice and whatever. They're getting pushed out. Now the pressure's going on those soldiers. They can't get in the door, or their mate got stuck. And, oh, what do I do now? What do I do now? My option is pull triggers. Like I'm panicking now. Oh, fear. Okay, so now I'm fear of us being killed or losing this. So we now need to just ramp the violence up. Same as police. If you're unable to just control the situation because you understand what violence is, and someone gets silly and they just grab their arm and say, settle down, mate. You know, like coppers when I was a kid, like they didn't even carry guns. You know, society had guns everywhere. Like Queensland, I was in the army when you didn't even need a gun license. You could buy an AR-15, you could buy an SLR, the same rifle I had at work, I had in my locker. I could buy it with no gun license. So people think America, well, it wasn't that long ago, we could do the same thing. Yep. So I could just go buy a gun without a license, yet the police didn't carry guns. Now we can't have guns and the police are carrying guns. It's like, what the fuck's going on?
What era was safer?
Oh, I felt much safer then.
100%.
And I don't feel like, kids, instead of going through the system where police can't do anything about you, and then you just get more and more, confident in doing the wrong thing, you think, oh, fuck it. And all of a sudden you kill someone, you go into a house or you do a serious crime, and then you're up for an indictable offence. So you go, oh, let off, bang, bad luck, mate, you're going to jail. When you could have just gone, mate, you're a dickhead, get a whack, go see dad, he goes, you're a dickhead, because the police bring you and you go, you did that, whack, and that was it, you're done. No problem. Now I get it, people abuse these things, and that's, and again, we go through, well, that's why we've got to make sure that power's not abused and all that, got it. But, yeah, it's really interesting seeing how times have changed. So as you get older, you start seeing it, and then you start realising why there's so many grumpy old men. Because they're probably just sitting there going, fuck this, I've seen it all before.
Oh, we were talking about that the other day. You watched
around.
Clint Eastwood movies, that one where what's that movie where the Gran Torino, where he's sitting on his porch drinking tinnies, eating jerky. I'm like, you watch that thinking he's just culturally disconnected from.
Oh, yeah, he's got his flag.
I reckon we're about 5 years off being Clint Eastwood sitting on the porch.
Yeah, and it's bizarre. But look, I don't accept that there's no-go places in Australia, and that's sort of how it's getting. I'm not very impressed that, I look at say, Victoria Police and how effectively they shut down everything to do with COVID, yet gang violence or Sudanese gangs is just way too hard to do something. Well, you did a pretty good job with the fucking flu. Old mate Ralph, you had fucking riot gear and you're smashing granny because she's got a fucking phone and she's filming you, or you're entering someone's house because they said Dan Andrews is a dickhead. But the gangs that are hitting shit, you can't sort that out. So what happened to your powers?
Just legislated them out of power.
Yeah.
Bureaucracy.
Yeah, but bring it back in
Yep.
to deal with COVID and just smash everyone. It's an emergency now. Okay, well then make fucking gang violence an emergency and do something about it. Hence, dealing with professional politicians who really don't give a shit and are just there being politicians. Now, COVID's an interesting thing because it's like musical chairs, because really none of us gave a shit about politics, and then states, fuck, we didn't even think states had power. Like, they just did shit, didn't they?
No, and I
But
think the
state
states didn't think
governments-
they had power, and then they were
States didn't think they had power, right? And all of a sudden we're sitting here and going, oh, guess what? It's up to the states if they close borders and they do this, do that, and all of a sudden, well, and you're sort of looking around going, well, who's sitting in the chair? The music just stopped. Who the fuck's in the chair? And you go, who the hell is that? And it's just a dude that, you wouldn't not have a beer with. You just, some dude that's out of uni who just wanted to be a professional politician and following through, and that guy's making decisions. You just think, okay, the old, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, guess what? It's broke.
Who did the
We need
what
better
country
leaders.
they had two? They had a king for peace, and then in wartime they had a king.
It was the Native Americans, I'm pretty sure, had that. So they're like,
Was it?
They're peacetime
And the
leaders
Romans
and they're
as well.
wartime leaders.
The Romans would, I'm not sure the name, but I think that word dictator actually comes from, it's a Roman concept. But that person would become the leader in time of war and then go back to the, relinquish the power in peace. But you need to be a benevolent dictator and relinquish power.
Exactly. You wouldn't get
And
that
then you
these
get,
days.
you get someone who doesn't relinquish power and off it goes.
You get the Dick Cheney model where it's like, oh, the war's over, we're going to have to hand it back. No, let's just start another one. And I mean, that's kind of what we've been doing for 20 years.
Yeah, it's been...
Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
Native American one trickled through their society. So it was even their whole groups of men. That was they had war fighting men, and they had their sort of peacetime men, and everyone sort of just went off the back burner. So from the start, it was like a peacetime thing that they would go through. They would just change positions. So you didn't get the whole ego with it. It was like, oh no, that's our job. Now it's over.
Because there's Polly's getting in. There's some good guys at the moment. Young
Yeah.
Tomo, he's fucking banging around. Year 9, maths and English, concreter, fuck all, went overseas, banged it in. And he gets up there and he's got tattoos, and they're like, you can't have tattoos in Parliament? That's fucking scary. I'm like, well, he's a fucking leader, and
Well, they better change that rule because fucking 9-year-olds running around with tattoos now. Everyone's got one, so they better change that. But yeah.
so how did you, from all this and from having some of the most extreme experiences a human being can have, you transitioned out of, well, you got out of the army. You got out of the army. And you knew what you wanted to do, or was there a lull?
Oh no, I got out of the army a couple of times. So I'm a retread. So I've been regular, reservist, inactive, out, full-time reservist, regular. So yeah. So I'm not institutionalised, and I saw life outside the army. And I started a business and started a new program with youth. I mean, initially I got out of the army, I was in 1RL, and it was a long piece, mate. It was before Somalia, and there's just, there's only so many elephant beetles you can just watch in the guard box being cremated in the fucking insect bug catcher, before you just think, what am I doing with my life? But fantastic start to life. And I loved the army, and I loved it initially, and so on. But I just thought, geez, is there, what's next? So I thought I'd join the police force, go join FICPOL, because I'm from Victoria originally. And we hit the recession we had to have from the 80s. So yeah, I got out initially in 1990 something, or mid-1990 or 91. Went to join the Victoria Police, did my thing to get in, and then they closed the academy. They could not afford to train police. So the recession was that bad, it was like, we've got no money. So that's what, what are we now, 5 times the debt? Like, shit's going to get weird, I'm sure. But they the army had no, so when I was in the army, we didn't have money to shoot live rounds. Often we had no blanks, no fuel, so just limited track time for vehicles. That's why we wore greens and had SLRs and stuff. No updating of equipment and uniforms because the Cold War is going, you know, and the last thing the government needed to do was spend money, so they pulled back their spending. But then the states started struggling, so Victoria literally closed the police academy. And so it was like, it didn't matter that you're going in next week or whatever, you start again when it opens. So my wife at the time, when it reopened, I started teaching martial arts. So I thought, I'm going to do this, you know. And it was part-time and I picked apples and struggled with all that. And if you want to know about that, I literally lined up to do an interview with a farmer to pick apples. Like there was lines of us. And you had to do interviews to pick apples. Like people don't understand.
No one
how this
wearing
shit can
tuxedos
go.
and
Yeah.
shit.
So as in contrast to today, where we're just printing fake money, and the whole country's on JobKeeper or JobSeeker, and they just open up 1,500 jobs to bring islanders in to pick fruit because Aussies
Because
are too
people won't
lazy
do
to
it.
go and do it.
Well, once you drop that $1,500,
They're going to
gonna
be,
find
they're going to
people
be like,
who
where's
want
those
to pick
fruit
fruit."
picking jobs?
Yeah.
Sorry, we just gave them all away.
yeah, we had lines of people picking fruit that wanted
Yeah.
to pick fruit. Yeah. And same as working in like abattoir and stuff like that. You just had people everywhere just waiting to someone didn't turn up to get called up. It's bizarre. So yeah, I did all that, and just felt, fuck, you know, welcome to the world. And then so I taught martial arts was my thing. But my wife, the academy opened again, and she applied and was in within 2 weeks. So she became the copper. And so, yeah, she was, and then we had a son. So I basically taught martial arts and looked after our son while she worked full-time as a copper. And then as time went on, I got involved with, she got posted into the country, and I got involved with, had some Aboriginal fellas who started training with me as well, doing martial arts, and the school got quite big. And became quite good friends with one person in particular. And then they said, well, you know, the boys need stuff because they're leaving school and shit. So I started working with this one young fella and just acted like a guy, you know, no bullshit, no fucking tree hugging. I was just, mate, we need to, you know, the reason some schooling helps us is for these reasons, and let's go do some shit and apply math to that. You know, let's look at navigation, let's look at survival and see how education fits into that. And he ended up back in school, and then the community's like, fuck, you're a lad back in school. So then it's like, well, can you do that for other kids? I ended up getting a program called Pathfinder that was for at-risk young boys and stuff, and that's kicked off, and then it had heaps of Aboriginal lads in it. And yeah, that just became a thing. And then, yeah, 9/11, and it's like, fuck, shit, it's gone south. And
Where were you when you watched?
Swan Hill, I just got back. I just got back from Melbourne, so I literally drove in. It was late at night, and I don't know why. I just thought, probably because I had 90 coffees to get back, and I just thought, I'll put the TV on. And the TV was on, and this building was fucking smoking. I'm like, what the fuck's going on here? I just watched, you know, like, you're caught, you know, the thing was live. I was like, shut up. And then talking about a plane, like, how the fuck does a plane fly into a building? That went south, you know, like you just think. And then that second plane just goes boom, you go, holy shit, they're under attack. He's fucking, and it's just shock. The whole thing was shock, like each thing that happened, you know, people jumping off buildings, and then a building coming down, and you're like, just watching it come down going. Like, you're not even accepting that's happening. You're seeing it, but your brain's going, no, that can't be happening. It was the most bizarre thing. So that just had me go, right, whatever I can do for the army, I'll just re-enlist. So I ended up getting offered a gig. So commando was my trade, right? So I ended up getting offered a gig to be the SME, subject matter expert for the military unarmed combat cell, to revamp MSD, military self-defence. I was there for like a day because they re-enlisted me And I'm like, okay, fucking off I go. At least I know this subject. And then when I got there, they went, oh, we've got a critical trade shortage for sergeants at 4 hour. You've got to go post it at 4 hour. I'm like, fucking hell. Like, I've been out of this game for a long time. There'll be a lot of catch up. And that was just the workload, the amount of catch up. And then being a sergeant, I had to do a massive amount of supervisor courses, and it was just non-stop. It was just dominated my life, as you expect. And then I never expect to go to Afghanistan. It was like 6 months later, bang, you're in Afghanistan first time. Go. And it was just that, it was just rampant. So it's like, yeah, I want to help the war effort, but I didn't expect to be standing in Afghanistan now.
6 months later.
6 months later, we're in Afghanistan. It's like, great, don't get me wrong. I'm rapt that happened. Like, couldn't be more happy with the way my career went in the army. But it was, a lot of luck. Well, you create a lot of your own luck. You got to be there, don't you, to make it happen. But yeah, it was interesting.
So then you get out from that, being at that sort of high pinnacle point of your career. Mm. Was there we sort of bring it up most of the time when we did a survey with dudes and said, what are the things that really reduce your mental health? Like, what are cause mental health decline in you? And we're like, here we go. It'll be like the throwaway PTSD. We're like, it can't be that. Mm. And they said, out of the 5, they said 4 of them was tribe, routine, identity, and purpose. Mm. These 4 things were the biggest things. One of them, so loss of tribe, loss of routine, identity, or purpose. And they just started dropping one and or all of those things. Mm. And I'm just be curious to know, when you left, you'd still have old boys.
It was the other way around for me. So what you said makes total sense. But the reason I left was just workload. It wasn't even me going, oh, I need to leave. I was like, I couldn't leave. So I started getting, it was 2009, I started getting pain, which I accepted because I was in my late 30s, fucking running around with these alpha male dudes having to get fit and fucking have armour and shoot and do your thing, right? So I go, okay, get it. But my whole body was just fucking just stopped. And I'm like, I'm fucking, what is wrong with me? I went to the doctor and he just looked at me and smiled and said, next door, mate. And go see the psych. And I'm like, it's my body, mate, not my head. Go see the psych. Hey, I don't know why I'm here. Oh, okay. Ask me a few questions. Yeah, I've got this on, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm going to run that course, and I've got to do that, yeah, blah, 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 blah. She's like, yeah, no, it's 2 weeks off. No, can't do it.
Can't do it. Fuck no.
Cannot do it. It's impossible. Impossible. Can't take 2 weeks off. I'm fucking too much on. We'll just be leaving the guys fucking short-handed. We're already short-handed. Can't do it. Yeah, anyway, that's an order, 2 weeks off, mate. Can't, impossible. So I'm back out with the doc going, fuck, what the you can't do this. 2 weeks, couldn't believe how good I felt. So it was literally stress. Even though I loved what I was doing, the body's like, fuck, can't do it. And it just starts to collapse. But that was the first time. But I kept going, I was okay. And then you've refreshed your tank and off you go. But I think the issue is too, when you do take your time off, it's not like that 2 weeks of what do I fucking do? And eventually you're just chilling out because you're so, I'm taking time off. All right, let's go to America and let's go check this out and let's go shoot here. And you can't slow down. So even your holidays just fucking ramped up. And then you come back from that and it's like, right, let's get into work, and you're looking forward to work. I remember, I don't want to sound like a fucking oddball, but there'd be weekends I just couldn't wait for the weekend to fucking end. So, especially on team, I fucking loved it. Best job in the fucking world, loved it. Loved being Echo Alpha, fuck. Couldn't think of a better job. Loved the time pressure, the stress, cracking orders out, flat out, one after, loved it. To this day, I'll tell you that's the best job I've ever done. but other people just melt under that stress. But me, if I don't have the stress, I'm just like, whatever, I just sort of chill, you know. I need some stress to
Move forward or
move forward,
rise
get
to
the
something.
angst up. Yeah, we're on. Okay, sweet.
Yep.
Let's do that. So I got out because simply that falling down process sped up, and just got to a stage where I was not well, and so I just became very unwell, and then one day at work just snapped, like boom. I was like, yeah, you're fucked, dude. And I was going to get out earlier, like I felt it for probably a year to a year and a half, but the CEO said, look, if you can just stay, you know, we'll do it. I want you to finish this capability and so on. Great, you know, great CEO and no issue and everything, but yeah, it was too long. And so I recognized it and was going to discharge just for my own well-being. And I just stayed on basically until I fell off the perch. And then that was it. I was wrecked. So I was just wrecked. I was probably wrecked for about a year. And then I'm on medication to try and become unwrecked. No idea what's wrong with me, just wrecked. And then I'm just smashing the alcohol, like smashing it. Just start drinking a bottle of whiskey a night and not well. And then basically I got offered a gig at the Australian Institute of Sport, you know, where they, you know, one of the scientists there had the idea of starting a combative centre for the Olympic combat sports. It hasn't been done before. It's like, sounds interesting. He goes, yeah, we want you to be culture because you've been doing this sort of close combat development and so forth from special forces. We want to bring that mindset and so on and so on. So it gave me a great opportunity. And that's what led me out. New purpose, new association, and elite. So I'm gone to commando, but now I'm going to the Australian Institute of Sport. So it's still elite. I'm still doing with elite. And then we're doing trips to the US to talk to, you know, we did a talk with some SEALs and we did a talk with the National Basketball League or whatever it's called, association, NBA association, with some of the coaches. And then we did stuff at Red Bull in Santa Monica. It was just bizarre, you know. So it's just, and that was all new to me. So it's like, oh, yeah, good. Anything that's just hasn't happened, you know, you just want to.
No experience, no.
Yeah, I just love it. I just love that sort of fast learning. What can I bring to the party? Just love it. So that sort of got me back on my feet. And then that was sort of fading away. And then the army went, hey, do you reckon you can do this with prep and trips with Afghanistan? And it's like, yeah, I can do that. And then that just picked up and then just really ramped up. And that's sort of how it all happened. So it's just, yep, I can do it. And yeah, getting back into it. But now I'm much more aware of what too much work is, and also I've got a lot of good people around me, so it's very different. And also it's your own business. It's not like being in the army where it's like, hey, I know you're doing this, but I need you to do this as well. You know, so it can be high tempo, but it's manageable and it's comfortable and it's enjoyable.
So what is a day in the life like? What's your routines? If you're killing it, bang, I've learned some biohacks, you know, like I get up, meditate, whatever. Like, what's your thing to get you in the
Yeah, I've been
zone?
cracking some meditation. I've got my first karate instructor, who's also a 1 hour guy. He's probably another 10 years. He's 10 years older than me, somewhere like that. And he's actually gotten right into Zen Buddhism and lives in Japan and comes back and does his thing and lives in Asia most of the time. And he's become a priest, like a Zen Buddhist priest. You know, whatever that translates to. And he's been showing me, you know, this just meditate. And it's just be there. Stop trying to influence everything. Just sit, be. If your head thinks, then think. And then, you know, it's just a really interesting thing. And it's very, very calming. So I was doing that for a bit. And then I ended up having relationship problems, which tends to be a problem for me, relationship problems. Probably because to be honest, I put work and I put my children sort of first. So I'm always seeing my children and I'm always working. And if someone can fit in with that, great. But as soon as I've got to fit into a life with someone, can't do it. Just can't do it. Can't do it. Simple as that. I've tried many times and cannot do it. So I just accept that's it. So, yeah. So to answer your question, I'll get up. Hopefully there's some guys that want to wrestle first thing in the morning.
Yeah,
Do
yep.
jiu-jitsu. And I'll do that and then go change. And it's sort of like, because there's a bunch of us and we're all running our own businesses, and then we've got this sort of overlay where we support each other and stuff like that. What happens is things just start. So you've got your emails and you've got all your stuff that you've got to do for your own company, but also people are coming in. And we're at a point now where it's really interesting because people are coming in going, hey, I'm this guy with sound, you know, and I work here and here's a new, and you're listening to his new headset. And you're like, yeah, and go, and you, it's all, you know, they're coming to you because they want your input and how can we do this, and is there an application for this with the military, and you know, and so we're doing that all the time with the, you know, VR, and we've got a partnership with Airbus for Nightjar and all these different things. It's just non-stop. So it's the variety that I like. It's the fact that I can't tell you exactly how each day plays out. And it's like, oh, you know, tomorrow, well, you're on the road, go. And that's a big thing too. I like being on the road. I like going somewhere. I like always being going somewhere. So,
Like Adrian's a gypsy as well. He can't stay.
yeah.
I'm in the same boat with almost all of it. Love being a gypsy. Kids and work are priorities. Can't find chicks to date. Well, find them, yeah, but
You find it, yeah,
good luck.
yeah, exactly, and and I've got seeing a girl now who's right into jiu-jitsu and she's into her work and stuff, and that seems to be working well. So it just depends, you know. And you know, my second wife, you know, she was around when I was in the army. You know, American. I married an American girl. So my kids are half American. My second batch of kids are half American. And she was a great person in that, but I was completely off the perch. I was wrecked. And I was on so much medication. Fuck. I could not function. And you know when you're there, but you're not. Like, you can see everything going on, but you're fucking cannot
Passenger,
function.
yeah. Yep.
And you're just like, yeah, you're a passenger. That's a good way of putting it. You just fucking... So what's the point, you know? So fucking eat chips and drink grog, whatever. So yeah, that's... She had me at a pretty bad time, so... yeah. And I've just realised that it's that keep going. And yeah, gypsy, absolutely. Oh, I think it's a great way to be. I've just accepted this is you. Stop trying to be like what fits best, and what I'm doing right now fits best. Be on the move all the time, be a gypsy, you know, be around what you want to be around, be helpful where you can, be part of this community, and that's sort of it.
Don't try and stick a round peg in a square hole. Like, if
Yeah,
that's where you are.
I've just got to a point, just accept it.
Yep.
So that's, you know, I hadn't really thought about that, but now that you've sort of mentioned it, it's just like, I just accept that this is what I am. Just be comfortable being you. Stop trying to be whatever the fuck you thought you had to be because that's the way you're brought up to think or whatever. Times have changed. Just be comfortable being you.
So where do people find your business, your social handles? Where, because we haven't really been able to plug the fucking amazing work you're doing. But where can they find you? What's the business? What's your future projects, mate?
We've got the socials. So Kinetic Fighting on Facebook, and then there's Paul Cale Official on Instagram and Facebook. So if people just want to jump on and see what's happening, feel free. Then there's a website, which is the w's kineticfighting.com, and that's that has a lot of information. It has blogs. It's very well looked after, that website, and it will tell you what's going on and what's happening, especially if you want to do training, you know, any of the, what's the training like? Well, the training is the tactics and the thinking that overlays martial arts. So it doesn't matter what martial art background you have, this will get you thinking and understanding what are the precursors to violence and human behaviour stuff, which first book, that's the first book, and the author is Matthew Wan, and he's an expert, works with us at Kinetic, and you can see his background is analytical, and his, you know, intelligence and a whole lot of, you know, spooky, happy things.
What's that book title?
And it's basically predicting violence. So it's the precursors, how to interpret non-verbal cues, and it's a manual basically. So it's part of what we teach, but now we've got a book for it. So that's about to be launched. It's not out yet, but that's the sort of thing we're working on now: getting the books sorted, getting the information so that people can get out there and access it. And we'll be doing the same thing. There'll be you'll be able to go into the website, access videos, and you know, do your thing and all that. But all of that is not my bag in how to set that up. So we've got the information, but we've got good people now to start putting it together. And it all takes time. Like, you know, we thought that would be a good idea, and then we were literally launching the civilian programs when the Army asked for this work, and we just couldn't keep up with the capacity. So we literally shut down everything we're doing in the civilian space, probably for 2 years, just because the workload that the Army had on us and the money, we had to redirect all our resources into servicing that. And then it wasn't until we got on top of it that we could then reallocate budget to get the civilian program back up again. So we make our money really from the government in what we do with government, but our passion is empowering people. So we keep going with the programs and keep that going. So that's important to me, because there'll be people that don't join the Army, that's not their thing, but you can still give them the experience of that service so that they can look after themselves, or at least have a different mindset, start thinking differently, and not just sit back and be a victim, you know.
Oh, spot on, mate.
Yeah. So
100%.
that's the big one that we're for. But yeah, there's a lot on. So we've got a couple of contracts we're right in the middle of now. So straight after this podcast, I'm in a meeting with that, and yeah, some big new sort of capability. And like I said, Airbus, like talking to other corporations, defence corporations and stuff. And we've got a few partners. We've got virtual reality software builders and so forth who are in Victoria for the company, with Kinetic XR, building, you know, like IED experiences with Bushmasters and all that, or close combat in virtual reality and so forth, and how to measure results and things. So it's non-stop, which is, it's good. It's challenging, but it's exciting. It keeps you keen each day. Yeah. So there's a lot coming out, so people just follow if they want to see what's happening. I've done a fair bit of work now with police departments in different states, mostly South Australia, and there's some other things coming up. So I try not to talk about what's coming, and people go, "Oh, gee, you're doing all this and this and this," but like it always, things fall over. But you know, when you don't have much on, when you're younger, you're kind of always talking about this thing that's coming, and it doesn't come, and then everyone goes, "Yeah, I didn't think that'd work for you." You know, if it does work, oh, well done, mate. But it's just, I can't even keep up with what is working, let alone all the stuff that failed. So I don't even worry about anything that's coming. We just tend to talk about, yeah, we're doing this, and this. But just like always, there's plenty of things that fall over. But just don't focus on them. Just forget that shit. That's just noise, you know. That's business. I think that's a big thing that I've noticed from young people at the moment. They think that everything's got to happen. Like the first step, you don't fall over. You know, you just kill it. And then, oh, look, I'm discovered. And then, oh, look, I'm a CEO.
Yeah.
It's like, fucking hell, mate.
It's the Instagram
You know?
generation. We'll talk about this last night with a bloke. We went out to dinner with a bloke that runs a really fairly successful powerlifting coaching company. And he's saying, like, it takes you 5 to 10 years of failure,
Yeah.
learning the hard way, and no one sees that. They see you the 10-year polish model and think you're an overnight success.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And just the money you lose in making mistakes and everything else. One thing I would say I'd recommend to anyone young, I did it by accident, which is the first thing I ever brought was a company. It was just a shelf company. But I don't understand why. Like, we didn't have YouTube and shit like that when I was young. It was like, just read books. But I just put everything through that company. Like, if I had an idea, I'd put the money in the company, and then I'd do it. It'd fail, lose my money. And I just kept doing that, and I kept the company. So even when I joined the army, I just kept paying every year to keep the company. But the fact of the matter is that I ended up doing business that was successful. Guess what? That company owes you that money, tax-free.
Oh, yeah.
So 20 years of fucking up, thinking that you've lost all this money. Well, hey, you're making money now. Good, go draw that 100K of your life that you made mistakes, tax-free, and put it in your pocket money because the company owes you.
Fucking take
You
that
gave
one.
it a
mate.
loan. You gave it a loan. So for whatever you do, the first thing you do, get a company. All your ideas, put it through your company. So that one day, if it does work out for you, which if you just keep at it, whatever, you know, and you're an expert, like, you've got to become an expert at something, like whatever it is. Give yourself 20 years, become the expert, and you will get your money back. And off you go.
Fuck, I'm writing that one down. Keegan, write it down, mate. Mate, that was fucking good having you on. I think everyone would agree. It's Australia's version of John Wick, Paul Cale, everybody. Thanks for coming on, mate. We'd love to get you back on and deep dive some of the extreme close quarter shooting stuff that you do and,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah,
all
no
that.
worries.
Mate, there's not enough minutes in the day to deep dive your story, mate. So,
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks very much. And it's great to meet everyone at Swiss 8.
cheers, mate. Thanks very much.
No worries.
Thank you.